So, peace and happiness. A lot of people don't really appreciate how much these two things are very intimately connected. Unless a person comes to a position of real peacefulness, then there is no chance or possibility of happiness. When we define or speak of happiness, what is happiness? Is everybody okay? Look rather serious from where I'm sitting.
Joy?
Joy.
Emotional contentment.
Emotional contentment. Yeah, I like these two words and what they express.
Freedom from the mundane mental thought processing?
The disturbances of the mind.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you
Inner feelings.
inner feeling?
Not
Understood.
What kind of inner feeling?
Happiness.
Yeah.
Peaceful. Freedom.
understood.
Undisturbed. Okay. Let's just step back a little tiny bit here. Why is it that we seek happiness? Isn't it? More or less, everybody is. I mean, it's a big driver. Most of the decisions that we make are either to avoid distress or pain, or more positively, to try and seek some sort of happiness or contentment. And it's like we're constantly driven by this. And this is something that is common to all humanity. It's not like located to a certain type of person or anything. Everybody has this innate drive. And of course the big question is, why? What's wrong with being sad?
It's like to survival and happiness. I don't know how, but brings about good health, and happiness is attractive, and
Yeah.
so
It's innately attractive. And in spite of the fact that most of us often fail in our attempts to find complete happiness, I don't mean to say that in any sort of judgmental way, but this is just a practical reality. And we often then think, oh, if only I could change some sort of my circumstances somehow, whether it's more money, a better relationship, or, be able to go to Fiji or somewhere and soak in the sun. Although all the Fijians are already soaking in the sun and they're not very happy about that. We always think that somehow if we change some of our external circumstances, that we will find this. Would you agree, just on a really practical sort of level, would you agree that, well, let me ask this question. When was the last time you were really happy? I'm not asking you to tell me, I'm just asking you to think about that. When was the last time you can remember being like really happy? And when I ask that question, what happens? All of a sudden it's like, oh. And then we have to actually start thinking about it, right or not? We have to, did I feel great joy today yet? Great happiness with anything? Well, how about yesterday? Well, and if we really want to be analytical, we may consider ourselves lucky if we have maybe 1 or 2 periods of, great happiness, that maybe lasts for 10 or 15 minutes in a day. If we really look at the scale of things. And it's like, what's going on here? I mean, we've got like 1,440 minutes in the day. And if we consider we're doing okay if we have like 15 or 20 minutes of happiness, that's not such a good deal. I mean, if somebody was trying to sell me something and they told me, look, this is what you have to do, all this stuff, and then we'll give you a little bit, put money in my bank, and what's the percentage of 14 or 15 against 1,440? That's what interest rates are now. Not a good example. But it's kind of like, this is not a spectacularly wonderful deal. And so there is a reason why we seek happiness and why it is often quite difficult to attain that condition or state of happiness. The principal reason that we seek happiness is because it is part of our eternal spiritual nature. When we look at the foundational teachings of yoga and spirituality, there is this one underlying and extremely important principle which we may agree with in some ways, but we don't connect with on an ongoing basis, minute by minute in our life. And this reality is that the body which you have on is not you. This is something that you're temporarily inhabiting. This is a vehicle that you are using, just as you are also using the mind. That these are not actually you. And yet in our day, if I ask most people who they are, can you tell me who you are? Immediately out come the labels for the body. Oh, I know I don't sound like it. I'm meant to be a Kiwi. I left a long time ago and recently returned. So, I say like, okay, I'm a male. Bam, wrong answer. No, you're not. That's a label attached to this body, something that you'll leave behind. Oh, I'm getting on in years. I'm 66 years old. Bam. No, you're not. That's your body. I'm have this type of complexion. I look like this. I will go on and go through a whole list of things that simply relate to what my body appears like. And the great tragedy of this is that when we are locked in this idea, and all of us are deeply, deeply conditioned by this wrong idea, then we will go through our whole life seeking to fulfill what are inner spiritual needs on the level of this body and my mind. And for this reason, it doesn't matter what you do to your body. It doesn't matter what you put in your mouth, what you see, what you hear. You can put all types of material energy into the different orifices of your body. You can rub it all over your body, but all it will do is stimulate your body and your mind, but it will never bring contentment. There will not be any experience that you engage in that will touch you so deeply that you will experience a form of contentment and happiness that is just like unparalleled.
Yep.
How are we doing with that? Are we're on board, or?
Yep.
Yeah? Not too devastating or shocking? And what's astonishing, when you encounter death of, particularly someone that you're close to, and you are in a situation where you have to look at this body, and all the labels, everything that we said, this is me, all the things we identified as being is still lying there. Not one of those things is gone. Every single thing that we looked at and said, this is me, this is me, this is me, is still there. And yet we say the person has left or they have gone. And we have this almost shocking experience. Is this too gloomy?
No,
We're
it's
okay?
great.
We're good? Okay. You know, we have this almost shocking experience where we go near a body and we feel like we want to recoil from it. We're repelled. We feel that it is innately unattractive and almost scary. And the reason that we feel so disturbed is for a very simple reason. Another characteristic of us, the true inner person, is that we are eternal. But when we identify so intently with this body, then when we encounter death, it shocks us and it recoils, and it's kind of like everything in our being wants to sort of like fight against this. Because here we have this, things have come, what appear to have come to an end. It is true, the life of that body has come to an end, but the life, the person that was giving life to the body, that person is still living. They have simply left. They have moved on. So this foundational understanding is really important if we want to build a successful life, a life where we can truly experience what it is to feel and experience joy and happiness and full contentment. So we spend our life pretty much we're just chasing ideas. And we don't realize how much our thinking is being controlled. It is being controlled by so many influences. Our family, society, big corporations, everybody is telling us what we need to be happy, what we need to be successful, because they've got a fundamentally, at least with the big companies and everything, their motive is profit. They will tell you, oh, this will do it for you. There's this amazing recognition amongst advertisers. This goes all the way back to the 1920s, when they first started getting into advertising and using psychological manipulation to sell products. There is this recognition that everyone feels emptiness. There is something in me that is not whole and complete and full. And then what they do is hold up products and say, this will bring you what you are looking for. I mean, years ago, the Coke slogan, Coke is it. My God, that's so manipulative and so deceptive. Coke is it. Is what? It, the thing that you're looking for, the thing that you feel that you need. This is the promise. And so there's, they use all these techniques. But the foundational thing is there is this recognition. The process of yoga is really about bringing one's life into total balance and a unique harmony or union or connection. As spiritual beings, and I'm having to jump here a few things kind of quickly because we don't have that much time. Is this interesting?
Yeah.
We're doing okay? By the way, if any of you have a question or you want some clarification on anything, feel free. There's no bad questions, there's no wrong questions, there's no dumb questions. Questions are important, and if you want clarification, please feel free to raise your hand. This is hopefully a little bit more of a dialogue or a conversation than, me just, I don't know, preaching or something. Don't want it to be like that. So we are eternal spiritual beings. Your individuality, your personhood. When you look, and again, the dead body thing. When you look at a dead body, what is the difference between a live body and a dead body? Don't say it, one moves. That's we can do something about that. We can knock that person out with an anesthetic or something and they won't be moving either.
The life force energy isn't in the dead body. The soul, the spirit of it.
Okay. So although I use it, I am usually a little bit adverse to the word soul. And the reason I'm a little bit adverse to it is because if you ask anybody that accepts that there is some spiritual existence and they call it a soul, and you ask people, okay, can you talk to me about that for, let's say, 3 minutes straight? Can you describe to me what is this soul and what is its nature? Can you talk? And all of a sudden people can't, and then they say things like, my soul. That statement is like, then I will ask, okay, if you have a soul, who are you? And what is the soul that you have? Oh boy, oh. Then there's all kinds of confusion and, we sort of accept things in a very superficial way. While it is true that there is this spiritual content, we don't really understand much about it. And so when we look at a dead body, for instance, and a live body, okay, what's the difference? Yes, there is an energy, but that can also be misunderstood. These ads, they have the Energizer bunny, and you put the battery in and the thing just goes and goes, waddling down the road, whatever it's doing. And then you take the battery out and it falls over. And you look at the bunny, oh, that's not much fun. It's not doing anything anymore. But then I look at the battery and it's like, oh my God, what is that? This is not much fun either. And I think that if I put them together, then I have something complete. And we often project this idea onto the spiritual existence or soul. And that is not a good understanding. That is extremely incomplete. So if, just in one word, the difference between a dead body and a live body is a person. It's a person. The body is not a person. The body does not have personality. It doesn't have personhood. That is part of the nature, your own spiritual nature, the nature. In Sanskrit, the word for this internal spiritual existence, it is called Atma. This word Atma means the self. It's a great description, yeah.
So if we're talking about, say, not just humans, but like animals, or even the difference between a living plant and a dead plant, what word is a person?
Okay, now we're getting down to stuff. Yeah, let me just say this: the symptom of the presence of a spiritual being is life. Life does not come from matter. And I get really upset how so-called scientists, I'm not talking about the really deep thinkers and the ones that are really profound, because they openly admit this, that there is no possibility that life has actually come from matter. But broadly in so-called science, there is this idea that that by putting atoms, neutrons and protons together in a certain combination and under certain circumstances, then miraculously, without knowing why or how, miraculously consciousness is going to manifest and life is going to manifest. That is really so unscientific. That is like a dogma. That's like a narrow religious dogma, to actually insist on something that you cannot explain, which has no basis in fact. There is no working theory of how life arises from material combination. The ancient...
It sounds quite dangerous.
Sounds dangerous. My statement. In what way?
That science believes that's a possibility.
Yes, that is actually dangerous. When you deal, not only a possibility, it is broadly accepted and not dealt with, in a really open and exploring way. There is a fantastic scientist. He was listed a few years ago as being one of the 5 most influential scientists in the world. And he's done a lot of work, and he's got all kinds of prizes on research and genetics and stuff. And some of the things that he has contributed have served as a basis for a lot of bioscience. And he wrote a book called Biocentrism, and he says that it's amazing how this is so widely accepted within the scientific community, yet there's no foundation for it. And yes, it is dangerous in a number of ways. So the living, the Atma, the self. The Atma is by nature a person. In Sanskrit, this is called Purusha. I don't know if we have many yoga fans here. There's a famous short work called the Yoga Sutra of Patanjali. And he refers to all yogic teaching, all Vedic teaching. They refer to the living being as Purusha. This Purusha literally means a person. Literally means a person. You are by nature eternal. And for this reason, there is this tremendous aversion to death. The consciousness is a characteristic of the living being. Matter is not conscious. There is no consciousness here. You cannot generate consciousness from this.
So what about plants? So what about
Okay.
non-animal
Okay,
life?
I'll get there in a sec. We're good. You can keep.
Yeah.
Don't be shy. I know you're not. You're cool to have in the front row. What's your name?
Helen.
Helen. Very nice to meet you, Helen. So, by nature, this living being, this Purusha, this spiritual being, should exist in a state of unlimited happiness. In Sanskrit, this is called Ananda. Another characteristic is that the need, and it's not a wish or a desire, the need to love and to be loved is also a part of your innate spiritual nature. And this is why when we seek to fulfill these actual spiritual needs on the level of the body and the mind, we always experience that it's not enough. I wish for more. In relation to your question, anywhere that you see life, life is present because there is a spiritual being, an Atma, in that vicinity. So the amazing thing about the material energy is that when the living being occupies a body, the body actually completely goes against many of the laws of science. One of them is that matter, by its nature, has a tendency to want to break down, entropy, to break down into its most simplest form. This is one of the laws of thermodynamics. So the tendency is always to go towards simplicity, to break down to the simplest elements. But yet, in the presence of life, the body becomes increasingly complex. And it grows not just from things stuck on it, but it actually grows the way it, if you examine this process, it's truly amazing. And there is just this there's this disconnect that this is actually attributed, the reason that the material energy is disobeying fundamental laws of thermodynamics is because of the presence of this being. So, got my eye on the clock there. There's like so much that to talk about and so little time. Let me just read you something. It is a verse from a very famous text called the Bhagavad Gita. The Bhagavad Gita is one of the most famous of the ancient spiritual texts associated with Hinduism and with yoga also. It states that a person who is not disturbed by the incessant flow of desires, which enter like rivers into the ocean, which has ever been filled but is always still. Such a person alone can achieve peace, and not the man who strives to satisfy such desires. So here, now, this is a whole different idea. We need to, if we are to lead a life that brings us to a position of peace and happiness, we are going to have to learn to make some distinction between the desires that arise from the body and mind and what is our true innate spiritual desire. We take this need for happiness and we twist it out of shape. We think that we can actually find it in this world. What's your favorite food? Huh? Chocolate. Okay, this is a good one. So, say we take you and put you in a room, right? And of course we're going to lock it because you ain't getting out of here that easy. And all you are going to have is chocolate to eat for the next 2 weeks.
I'm not going to want it.
Huh?
I'm not going to want it after a certain
Yeah, right, a certain amount of time. And so whether it's a certain type of food that you like, or you hear a certain type of music that sort of sets off something in you and you get all a flutter and, oh, that makes me feel so nice. Okay, let's put the headphones on and let's secure you to that chair, and you're going to hear that same piece of ecstasy-inducing music non-stop for the next 3 days. And it's not very long before it goes from being wonderful to now a form of torture.
Is variety is the spice of
Huh? We're getting there. This is actually the dumb workaround. She said variety is the spice of life, and this is kind of like the not very intelligent workaround. Just keep mixing it up, a squeeze of lemon, a little chili, a little bit of cilantro, a little, just anything to keep spicing it up. Because if you stick with it, it goes from heaven to hell really fast. So what is that? If something is actually making me happy, the more I do it, the more happy I should become. Is that not logical? If you give me $1, I've got $1. You give me $10, now I've got $11. Somebody else gives me $100, now I've got $111. The more you give me, the more I get, the greater it becomes. But why is it not like that with happiness? This is actually a big subject, and we may be going a bit too far here, I don't know. Are we okay with this?
Yep, I'm not sure. I was just thinking about like marriage and relationships. And
Marriage and relationships?
Time goes on.
Yeah, well, okay, I'll give it to you really, really straight. If you expect another personality in this world to completely fulfill you and fill up your need to both love and be loved, you are foolish. This is crash and burn territory. You can have wonderful, healthy, affectionate, and even loving relationships. But if we think that this is going to be the central thing of my life, and in this I am going to experience perfection, ain't gonna happen, sorry. It doesn't work that way. And doesn't matter how many songs we hear, you know, and how many movies we see, and how many good love stories we read or whatever. That's not me. That's not my life. This is an ideal, and it actually springs from another spiritual ideal. It is possible to come to this state of experience such perfect happiness and complete love in a way that's, you know, just unimaginable for people in this world. But we need to begin to do things that make it so that we can have this awakening of, first, who we really are, who we actually are. Where do I fit in this world in relation to other people, in relation to the world itself? Is there some higher entity or energy or something? What is my connection with that? And then I must discover what is my natural function. What is it that is the actual function of me, this spiritual being within inside this body? This process of discovery of both self-realization and God-realization, which goes hand in hand, is the true purpose of yoga, to come to this position of such harmony and spiritual awakening and experience. So we need to get real about life in this world. We are going to exist in this body. We are going to do it for a certain amount of time. The time that we spend here will come to an end, and we will move on. The only thing that you can actually be sure of in this life is that you will die. Nothing else is sure. But it's something we don't want to think about, talk about, deal with, consider. And like that, we want to be unrealistic about the nature of this world. Yes, I can have pleasurable experiences, but the nature of the pleasure that I experience in this world is fleeting. And I need to keep mixing things up, variety being the spice of life, as they say, for me to have ongoing experiences. And you can now invest all of your energy and your time and your money in trying to keep that thing going and trying to keep providing yourself with endless variety in the hope that it will never end. Or you can actually start looking elsewhere. When we look for happiness, we always look outward. We look beyond ourselves. We expect this person or that person or this situation or that situation is what's going to make the difference. But the process of spiritual life is actually an inward journey. And that sounds like, oh my God, what are we talking about? That sounds like a bit of a freak out. Or it sounds like it's like, oh my, this is impossible. Let's get real here. That's because we have so many misconceptions and wrong ideas about these things. So today we're obviously not going to be able to go into these kind of things in depth, but you know, perhaps we can set up a little bit of an ongoing dialogue if Ali would like to do that, so we can connect again and start looking at spiritual development as an actual process. It does have a beginning, and there are stages, there are things that can be done to transform our life. A really big and important part of this process is actually meditation. Yoga has become, you know, the big buzzword. Everybody's into yoga. Everybody knows yoga. People, or so they say. The problem is that asana, the physical aspect of yoga, is actually only one part of an 8-part process. And the entire process needs to be executed for that system to actually work and to reach a spiritual conclusion. But whether you're traveling down that particular path of yoga or any other path of yoga, a really important part of one's spiritual awakening and developing understanding is centered on the process of meditation. In Sanskrit, this dhyana. This process of meditation is a process by which one seeks to gain some amount of control or exercise some amount of control over their mind. But it's not just, when you ask most people, what is meditation? Many people think it's just sitting silently or calming the mind or bringing the mind into focus. These things are all preliminary activities. They don't actually constitute actual meditation itself. Meditation has something to do with experiencing that which is spiritual, experiencing transcendence. If I want to wash my clothes and I put them in the washing machine, but I turn the water off and I don't put any soap in and I just hit all the buttons and let it go, and you know, when it's finished, I open it up and it's still smelly, dirty clothes, right? You need some sort of medium to bring about a cleansing, a transformation, and that's of course the water and the soap. In meditation it is similar. In order to bring the mind to spiritualize it, and I'll give you this example, what I mean by spiritualizing. If I take iron, right, an iron rod, and I put it into a very hot fire where there is air blowing and a fan, what happens to the iron? It starts becoming hot, and then it becomes red hot, and it'll become like yellowish, and then eventually white hot. And when I take that iron out of the fire, it is still iron, but now it has all of the characteristics of fire. It's emitting light, it's emitting heat. If I touch it to something flammable, it will burst into flames. In a similar manner, through the process of meditation, one is meant to take the mind and put it into the fire of transcendental experience, spiritual experience, so it begins to take on a different nature. It becomes increasingly purified, and we are able to perceive our real spiritual identity more and more clearly. So one of the most effective ways to engage in meditation, earlier on we had Kunti here chanting these some of these mantras, this transcendental sound. there is a whole process of how the sound is being delivered. We had a nice experience last Sunday. I was with Paramhamsa Das and a couple of other people who had a yoga thing in Takapuna. No, where was that?
In Ponsonby.
Ponsonby, right. Sorry, folks.
Been a while.
It's been a while. I just came back to New Zealand last November. I've been away since I was 18, so sorry about that. I'm trying to catch up. And after the yoga asana class, Paramhamsa had been asked to have a little bit of a chant, so when people are completely relaxed, just let these sounds wash over them. And he was approached by an older man at the end of the experience who thanked him very much and told him that he had actually, this was a quite emotional experience for him. He wasn't sure what was going on, but he knew there was something more to this than just the syllables. There is not, this mantra, this word mantra, it means from the Sanskrit manas, which is the mind, and tra means literally to draw away. So it draws the living being away from this overwhelming influence of the mind to a place where you can find some peace, and where after this gradual purification process, through this gradual purification process, one actually comes to an awakening to their real spiritual identity. And so these sounds have tremendous spiritual potency, and when they are received in the right way, and when they are also sung or spoken or repeated in the right way, they have an enormously purifying effect and help us in this process of self-realization, experiencing our real spiritual identity. So we're going to do that. And then I was wondering when to do the question. We could do question now. Anybody have a question? Yeah, sure.
Gals, when you were saying that, chocolate or hearing the same sound vibration for 3 days, that was going to get tired of it, right? And she said, well, what about, chanting?
Yes. A couple of things. The reception to receive actual spiritual sound, it must be done in a certain way. It's not a question of just the shape and the form. Like if I want to have I decide, we want an electrical outlet on this wall. I go down to Bunnings Hardware or somewhere and I buy an electrical plate and I come back and just attach it to the wall. And then I go and plug a fan or something into it. Am I going to have electricity? And the answer is no. Because while it seems to have the right shape and form and it's got the right brand on it and everything, I have not arranged for electrical wires to be connected. And these electrical wires are carrying energy from the energetic source, the generating source of that electricity. And so in a similar manner, the reception, how one receives spiritual sound and transcendental sound is considered actually important. There needs to be this connection. In Sanskrit, this is called parampara, and the lineage that one receives these things from is the word sampradaya. So receiving it is important, but there will also be this experience. In the beginning, because of the fact that we are so covered by these ideas, like what we talked about in the very beginning, ask you who you are, you just immediately start firing off labels that describe your body. And yet that's actually doesn't have anything to do with you. In due course of time, this will be left behind and it will become ashes or the stool of worms. Sorry, That's the hard, cold reality. And this is not who you are. But because we've been very covered by so many ideas, we are considered to be in somewhat of a sick condition, like a person with jaundice. If you have jaundice and you put sugar in your mouth, you can't believe how bad that tastes. It's like foul. It is bitter. And it's not just the bitterness, it's just so incredibly unpleasant. I had hepatitis A before, and it was just like this experience when I was in India, very young. But part of the cure, the Ayurvedic cure, is to keep rock candy in your mouth and to crystallize sugar and keep sucking on it. And what happens is over the period of about a week, as you've been treated and been careful and you begin to heal, and the inflammation in the liver and the bile duct reduces, all of a sudden it's less unpleasant. And then eventually it becomes, wow, you're getting a little remembrance of the sweetness. And then it gradually, as you achieve a healthy condition, you can taste the full sweetness. So I think most people, when they have a nice meditation experience, even a brief one, they feel that it somehow touches them in their heart of hearts. And it's quite pleasant, and it's just very nice. As we continue in this activity, it's like the iron and the fire. As our mind also becomes increasingly spiritualized, we feel a greater affinity to the point where a person will simply live for this experience. This is their hope, this time every day that they can spend in this activity is such a source of joy. So people in the very beginning will have different levels of experience depending where you're coming from. Some people are just like not touched by it. Other people, and you can't tell who's who. I had this experience one time when a friend that I'd just recently come to know was leaving his body, and so we were sitting in his room chanting for hours on end, and it created this wonderful atmosphere. And then I didn't see this person, but there was somebody that knew him, this large Maori guy with full tats on and everything. He came in and sat on the chair behind me and put his head in his hands, and then just closed his eyes and listening. And then he just broke down crying. And he cried non-stop for about 30 minutes, just tears just streaming down his face. Whereas another person maybe not touched in that kind of way. So it's going to be different for different people in the very beginning. But I do guarantee you that regardless of what your state is right now, if one engages regularly in this activity, it is totally transformative, and one will develop such an affinity for the sweetness of this activity that it will become a very central focus of their life. Long answer. Is that okay?
A bit skeptical.
But yeah, no. Well, you know what? Two things.
Because there's other forms of song, sound.
Yep.
And it's not necessarily
Yep.
a mantra.
Actually, there's we can get real technical on this, but I don't think we have time and stuff. But it's quite amazingly wonderful. Skepticism is never bad. Skepticism is healthy. And people should never, if they have some hesitation or some skepticism about something, that's not something that you should push to the corner ever. The second thing is, with the yoga process, it's not ever about belief or acceptance. It's about engaging in a process that's likened to a scientific process and discovering for yourself whether there is any truth to it or not. It's not about what everybody else, what experience others are having, or what they are not having, and whether that's just emotional or sentimental or real. That's all completely irrelevant. You know, your spiritual life is a deeply personal thing, and it's about your personal experience, and whether you come to experience a reality in it, or you find it's a complete waste of time. That's what you must find out. The proof of the pudding is in the eating. But one must eat it in order to taste. Okay? So what we'll do is we'll just chant. What are we going to chant? Oh my God! We'll do Om Hari Om. That's a really simple one, and for maybe just about 10 minutes or so, a brief one. Then we'll have a break, and I think they've got a few refreshments. And if anybody wants to ask anything, please do feel free. Don't be shy, okay? Shy is not good. This is important stuff. Okay? Thank you very much for this opportunity to speak with you.